Hello and welcome to Kenversations with Ken Okonek. I am so excited to share with you my guest here today. I have Fred Drake, the owner of Snorkel Alaska, and I'm so excited to hear his story, have it be shared with you about his passion for scuba diving, teaching it to others in a crazy place like Alaska. Like I know for me personally, when I think of scuba diving, I think of like Florida, Costa Rica, Mexico. I don't think of Alaska. So I'm sure you have a lot to say about that, Fred, but I'm just really excited to have you and thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. I know scuba diving is definitely part of my passion, but what I do here is primarily snorkeling with our
Sorry.
guests.
Yeah,
We
sorry,
don't,
snorkeling.
yep, definitely more of a snorkel tour, but yeah.
Well, and so with the snorkel tour, I mean, it started with you getting, it's like for you, Snorkel Alaska started with scuba, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, I've got a long history of being in the water. I started when I was a kid, learned how to scuba dive at a young age, went to Humboldt State University, continued that dive education. Then I got a job on a cruise ship taking people snorkeling in all the ports of call. So my title was dive in instructor. This was on Norwegian Cruise Line, and we were also part of the cruise director staff and part of the shore excursions team. But that's when I kind of veered off of teaching diving and primarily into the snorkel world of taking people snorkeling, which, just about anybody can do. And that led me to Alaska in kind of a fast fashion, is kind of how I got here.
So while you were doing that for the cruise ships, I mean, where were you? I mean, I know my experience on cruises, you're everywhere. So like, where were a lot of these places that you were doing all that at?
I started with Norwegian Cruise Line in 1989. They had six ships in the fleet, and these were primarily based in the Caribbean. So I
Mm.
started out in the Bahamas. My very first contract, they sent me to their private island, Great Stirrup Key, and I spent about 4 months out there training to work on the ship. So part of this training was leading snorkel tours with the guests who would come in from the ship, and eventually they got me onto the ship, and then we started sailing the Caribbean. Eventually they sent a ship out to Bermuda, and they also had one out of Southern California going to Catalina, San Diego, and Ensenada, Mexico, and they had all the wetsuits on that ship. So we would work 3 months on, take 1 month off, and generally would switch ships, so you never go back to the same ship really. And so I got onto that Catalina run, and I loved it. I mean, it kind of brought me back to my roots, Humboldt State, going into the cold waters. And so when they started talking about going to Alaska, they weren't really strangers to having wetsuits on the ship and snorkeling in the cold water. So that's how that all kind of came about.
Wow. And so did you come to Alaska through the cruise lines, or was it something else that brought you to Alaska then to step into snorkeling?
Nope, I was working for Norwegian Cruise Line, and they started talking about sending a ship up to Alaska. I got pulled into the corporate office with a couple of the other divers, and we kind of talked about it. We did a whole bunch of research. Of course, back then we didn't have the internet, so we had to make phone calls, and found out that Ketchikan was the most viable place to take folks snorkeling because the water is warmer, it's clear, there's no glaciers. And so we kind of came up with this whole idea to start what they called the Dive Into Adventure program. So we were not only snorkeling tour guides, we also assisted the local tour operators with their sea kayaking tours, mountain biking excursions, and then we also got Forest Service permits to offer our own hikes. So here we were, Americans working on board the cruise ships. We could legally work in the Alaskan ports of call, unlike most of the staff these days. So that's how
Yeah.
that all came about. So Ketchikan was the best place to offer a snorkel tour, but it wasn't enough to send three guys to Alaska. So we had to come up with another program. And so we got a sea kayak on loan from one of the local tour operators. I was in charge of like the sea kayaking demonstration in the swimming pool. I had a whitewater kayaking background. And then when we got to the other ports, like I would take the kayak tours out. One of the other guys would lead the hiking tours. The other guy might focus on mountain biking. So we had to really wear a lot of hats, become jack of all trades, and that's how I and these other guys got to come to Alaska.
Wow. And so what year was that when you came to Alaska for the first time?
First ship was the MS Windward, arrived in 1994.
Okay. Wow. And so how long were you doing that for them? Where were you living? And then what led to you moving to Alaska?
I lived on the ships, so pretty much it was, from 89 up to about 96. It was 3 months on, 1 month off, go on vacation. I, of course, left stuff at my mom's house back in Connecticut, but I didn't really have a home. The ship was home. And so
Wow.
I spent 7 years at sea. I did 3 summers cruising in Alaska. And, after 7 years, I'd been on all the ships. I kind of wanted to explore some other options. And a lot of these local tour operators that I got to meet and know, they kept telling me, you should start your own snorkel tour, quit the ship, start a snorkel tour right here in Ketchikan, and, do like we do. We work 6 months on, take 6 months off. I'm like, that sounds pretty tempting. But it was a big leap of faith. I didn't have a business background. I had a degree in recreation, and I'm a dive instructor. So it took me a little while. I got off the ships in 94 or 96, and then I dabbled around in different career paths, not really doing so well outside of diving. And then I got an offer to take a job in Alaska, in Juneau, for Gray Line of Alaska. I was hired as their division manager to run the bus company in Juneau, which basically ran all the transportation for all the cruise lines up in Juneau. So I took that job solely with the idea of getting kind of my foot in the door with all these other cruise ship people that I'd never met, like Princess and Holland America and Carnival and that kind of thing. And I took that job and started putting the wheels in motion to how am I going to start a snorkeling tour in Ketchikan. And it took me a while. I mean, from the time I left the ships was 96. So 5 years later, 2001, I started Snorkel Alaska and picked up 3 cruise lines right off the bat. So it was Holland America, Carnival, and Princess. They were the first 3 that says, yes, we're going to offer this tour.
Tell me about that is such a cool thing. So context, right? I always talk about how life there's these building blocks of like decisions that you make that add up to like where you end up going or what the compilation of those things end up creating what you create or who you become and how you do it. I'd be interested to hear because that was really cool about you choosing the Greyhound job. Talk to me how that, like the depth of what that created for you to be able to then start Snorkel Alaska, because I think that's a really important thing. That's a conscious decision, right? Not a lot of people maybe look and connect those dots, but right away, I mean, I see it. And so I would love to hear like what led to that decision. How was that decision? What was that journey like? Because obviously I can imagine that's a significant different job than being on a cruise ship or doing that sort of thing. And you're obviously really passionate about it. So like what was that step and that journey like and what led to that? That would be really cool for me to hear.
Yep. When I left ships, I didn't really have a game plan, and that wasn't very smart. I ended up going back to Humboldt to the Arcata Eureka area where I went to college because I had a whole circle of friends there.
Yep.
And I took some random jobs selling cell phones, outside sales for specialty maintenance products. And I did not like any of those jobs. I hated sitting in an office. And then one of my friends from Juneau, she was one of the tour operators up there. She called me up and said, "Hey, Fred, Gray Line is looking for a new division manager. And I think you would fit that job very well because they had lost the contract to transport the Norwegian Cruise Line guests on all of their excursions. There was a competing bus company at the time. It was Royal Highway Tours. And so Royal Highway Tours was now doing all the transportation for Norwegian Cruise Line tours in Southeast Alaska. So I applied for this job having zero experience in transportation, let alone managing a team of 55 people, mechanics, drivers, dock reps. But the gal who hired me, Linda Houston, she flew me to Seattle. I wore my suit, went to the interview, And I still had some really good friends working on Norwegian Cruise Line in the shore excursions department. So my goal was to lure that contract back to Gray Line of Alaska.
Yeah.
So my job was, again, the division manager, it's a pretty big job. I don't feel like I was really qualified for it. But part of that job was to schmooze and wine and dine all the shore excursion managers from the company, from the cruise lines that we worked with. So that was Carnival, Holland America, and I believe it was Royal Caribbean and Celebrity. And then I was trying to get Norwegian to come back over. So I would take those guys out to dinner, take them out for drinks. A lot of the ships stayed in port till like 11 at night. And eventually the next year, Gray Line won the Norwegian contract back. So, my job was kind of done, but I did not like that job because I had to wear a tie. It was just corporate everything I'm really not into so much, but it was a great stepping stone because I got to meet all the shore excursion managers from all those cruise lines. And every time I took them out to dinner, I'd say, hey, what do you guys think about a snorkeling tour down in Ketchikan? Would you guys, think you could sell that? And so that kind of got the ball rolling. And I did that job for not even a year. I did the whole summer season. And then right about Christmas time, I think I put in my notice, and some friends of mine were running a bicycle tour in St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, and they hired me to manage that. And so off I went down to the Virgin Islands with still this whole plan of trying to get Snorkel Alaska together. So um, after Gray Line, I did the island bike adventures, and then I came back to Ketchikan and I guided tours with Southeast Exposure. So I did mountain biking tours, sea kayaking excursions, just as a tour guide. But during my days off, I had one wetsuit, I had a mask and snorkel and some fins, and I'd go out to the snorkel site and take pictures. And I put together literally a paper proposal, in a binder that I mailed into all the cruise lines in the winter of 2000. And I got bites from, again, those three cruise lines, Princess, Carnival, and Holland America.
Man, so I mean that was like a couple years of thinking about it, having the conversations, wrapping your head around it, and
Hmm.
then creating the binders and setting it off. That's incredible. That is awesome. You don't see that all the time. And that's really cool how you connected those things and then went from there. So tell me about it. So like you send these brochures off, I mean, you eventually get three cruise line deals that are like, hey, yeah, we're gonna do it. I can only imagine you're like, okay, now I
Oh
gotta like, well, I
man.
gotta do a business. So like, talk to me about like what that phase looked like and
Oh
how
yeah.
did
Now
that
I'm
all
like,
work
oh
out?
my God, now I actually have to put it together. Like
Yeah.
I'd started to do a business plan, but I picked up a copy of the book Small Business for Dummies. And basically you can tailor that to any state. But then I got on the Alaska State of Alaska website and found out, what do I need? Well, first you need to buy a business license. Well, I had to have a PO box, so I got the PO box when I was here. Then I got a business license. Obvious name, Snorkel Alaska. But how am I going to put this together? Because I didn't complete my business plan. I didn't go to the bank for a traditional loan. I borrowed some money from my dad. I maxed out all my credit cards. All of a sudden, I got to come up with an equipment truck, which I bought down in California, a big old U-Haul box truck. And I lined up with a Scuba Pro dealer down there, who could get all the equipment for me at dealer pricing. So I had to go to
Hmm.
Scuba Pro because I wanted their equipment. It's the best. Basically, they have the best equipment. So I got the guy from California to connect me with a dive shop in Redding because I was actually teaching snowboarding and skiing in Mount Shasta during that winter. Got all the equipment delivered to that shop, picked it up in the U-Haul, drove the U-Haul to Bellingham and put it on the ferry. I still didn't have a place to live here. I didn't have a physical business. My idea was I'm going to set up a wall tent out at the site and people are going to get dressed out there. And I had all the equipment in the back of the box truck. And that was not the best setup because it rains here, it's windy, it's cold. I set heaters up in this wall tent, and it was an old army style wall tent. It was like 40 by 20 or something like that.
Ooh.
And so that's how I operated. I had to set the tent up every morning and then take it down because I couldn't leave it there overnight. And then I had a warehouse that I rented out that I could set it up again to let it dry overnight. And then I'd break it all down, set it up again in the morning. And so I'm like killing myself. So 6 weeks into that, this shop became available and I immediately jumped on it. And we used to have the wall tent set up in here instead of these dressing rooms that you see behind me. And yeah, so I had all the equipment in the back of a box truck. And then once I got into the shop, then I built all these shelves and, boot racks and wetsuit racks and everything else. And now I probably would have failed if I had to keep setting that wall tent up and never had a physical location. That was just crazy, but it got me through the first 6 weeks.
That's insane. Well, walk me through that. So okay, you got the equipment, you got your all the paperwork, everything's set up. So your first, and I can imagine most of clients, right, are directly cruise ships, right? Because that's that first funnel that you had coming into you. And so, like, what was it like? Was it a trickle that first season? Was it a downpour? Like, what was that? And what were some of the challenges that you faced in that outside of the wall tent and that cumbersome thing? But talk to me through that first year, that first 2 years. What were some of the things you went through? What was it like? How did you learn? What did you apply that made things better? That sort of thing outside of the shop.
Yep. My goal was always to be sold through the cruise lines. I wanted to be a shore excursions that the cruise lines sold for me because I needed their, recommendation to make the passengers feel at ease. Okay, this is
Right.
a cruise ship sanctioned tour. Well, they send all their reps up here in May to check out all the tours. Well, the day they came to check out my tour, it snowed 6 inches. So we got 6 inches of snow on the ground. I got the wall tent set up out there. I'm dressed in a wetsuit when they all arrive. They're like, this guy is insane. And I go and jump in the water and I grab sea stars and cucumbers and urchins and I brought them all up to the beach. They're all like standing on the banks freezing and I'm in the water actually pretty comfortable because the wetsuits really work to keep you warm. But they were like, this is insane. But anyway, the very first ship came in. I think it was the Statendam was the Holland America ship. And the gal on board, Maureen, she's an elderly lady who just loved me. She'd always pinch my cheeks, like I was her grandkid. Oh, little Freddie, but she sold out the very first tour, 20 people. So my very first tour of May, it was like, I don't know, May 5th of 2001, sold out. So now I really got to like make this happen. Now, I'm running with the old Norwegian Cruise Line model. We had two dive instructors to lead 20 people out there. I've got myself, the gal I'm dating, and another guy who we hired from Mount Shasta to take these 20 people out snorkeling. And it was crazy. So I basically ran two guides to 20 people for the first 2 seasons. So the first 2 years, it was those three cruise lines. So we didn't have tours 7 days a week. We would typically do two tours a day. Um, but then all of a sudden, Royal Caribbean and Celebrity started knocking on the door. They wanted to offer the tour. So for season three, I had to figure out, okay, now I got to add more staff. I've got to get more equipment. I'm going through growing pains, but I made it all work. And then 4 or 5 years later, Norwegian Cruise Line dropped their whole snorkeling tour and they wanted me to do it for them. So again, okay, now I need more staff. So I'm growing and growing and growing. I'm taking 80 people out in a day, and I'm dealing with all these wetsuits. I'm drying gloves in my dryer at home, which I still do to this day because I live right next door. But just how do you get 80 wetsuits dry and ready to go for the next day? Well, you don't. They're not going to be ready. They're still going to be wet. So I had to have enough wetsuits that were completely dry to outfit 80 one day and 80 people the next day. So I ended up, collecting something like 250 wetsuits over the years, and they're still all scattered about in here. I mean, if you could have a look around the shop. So, but yeah, so I ran like that. I built up to 10 employees. We were running 4 to sometimes 6 tours a day. I had to have two of those equipment trucks. But what was really nice about selling through the cruise lines, kind of a blessing and a curse, they provided the transportation.
Hmm.
So I would get my net rate from the cruise line. The bus company, Gray Line of Alaska or Royal Highway Tours or whoever we were using, they would tack on 10 to 15 bucks a head for transportation. And so I didn't have to deal with that transportation side of things. And the buses were always late consistently. So we have an 8 o'clock tour off the dock, the bus isn't there. And I'm like harping on them. I'm like, where's the bus? They're like, well, it's on the way. I'm like, I know they told you to tell me that. I used to be the gray line guy. Come on, I know. Where's my bus exactly? So I can tell the people, so they're not standing out in the rain. But we consistently had late buses, which meant late tours, less time in the water. And it just kept getting more and more frustrating. And after, 19 years of selling through the cruise lines, that's when COVID hit 2019. That's when I thought maybe I can do this without the cruise lines selling
Oof.
for me.
Wow. So, I mean, that's a huge, like, I mean, I can't imagine, right? Like 19 years, you go from nothing to 80 tours a day or 80 guests a day, multiple tours a day. Everything is a cruise line, right? Obviously,
Mm.
technology has changed a lot over 19 years, but talk me through like that transition because that's a huge transition with a huge risk. It's really scary. Not a lot of people do that in business. What were some of the things that led up to that decision? And you've probably already shared a little bit. Obviously, the buses being late, but like, what did you go through when you made that decision, and what did it take, and where is it going now? Like, how has that happened? Because that's a huge transition to get rid of the tour buses or
The,
the cruises.
yeah, that was something in the making for many years. As the company got bigger, and I was dealing with that transportation side of things, dealing with the shore excursions, personnel on the ship, the email workload alone. I mean, right, this summer we had 30 ships per week, and the ships send you their tour times like 5 times a day. You got 10. Okay, you don't need to keep emailing me that, but they want to reply. So the email workload was getting insane. The hiring of guides, and I can't find enough local guides here. They're not qualified. They maybe don't have dive master or instructor certifications. This added into the equation. Finding housing for the guides that are coming up from out of state has become increasingly more difficult. So way back when, I had a buddy of mine who was a web designer, and we were adventure buddies. We would go hiking in the mountains to go snowboarding here in Ketchikan. We would go whitewater kayaking together. We'd go out on snorkel trips and get harvest abalone scallops. So anyway, he says, "Why don't I build you a website?" Because I made a website myself, like on a really old platform, just an informational site that the cruise lines could link to, and it said book through your cruise line if you want to sign up. Well, anyway, he made a website for me that had a booking system that I paid for one time. It was like a one-time fee to get that booking system in place. And he designed this really nice website for me. And I started taking bookings over the website. So if I give the cruise lines 20, I would put 4 spaces on my website because I could literally run a max of 24. That was like my absolute maximum number of guests. So this was probably, I don't know, what year was that? I'd have to look, 2012, maybe 2010 even. So I started taking bookings away from the cruise lines, and they wanted a commission. They said, well, if you're booking people directly off our ship, we want you to pay us the commission. I was like, go jump in the lake, forget about it. So that started it. I was taking 4 people, and it didn't always book out, but anyway, that's how it all got started. Then that website was performing pretty well. People were booking directly. I was getting 100% of the money instead of giving, upwards of half of it to the cruise lines. And that's when I'm like, I kept thinking there's got to be a better way. What if I could literally get twice the money that the ships are giving me and take half as many people? I should make the same amount of money and have a lot less stress and work and employees and all that kind of thing. So that's what got the ball rolling. And then COVID hit, and it was like, I got to make a change now. It's time for me. I've been doing this for 19 years. I got to take a risk, give it a go, drop all the ships. They're like, you can't do it without us, you'll never make it. Everybody told me I was crazy to start a snorkel tour when I first started. Everybody, the whole town, people were just like, yeah, you're never going to make it. Well, I turned a profit in 5 months. So I basically showed them, right? So then they're all like, you can't drop the cruise lines, you're never going to make it. I'm like, watch me go. So now it's been how many years since we started back up again, and I'm still going. And that's, and partially thanks to you guys helping me with my new website and marketing and all that good stuff.
Small piece to a big pie, right? Like it's the decision, it's the belief, it's the leap, right? All those things that you had chose to do, beforehand. Yeah, were we in the right place at the right time, and did we connect, and did we provide a service that was valuable? Sure, right? But I'll give a lot of credit, and you should take a lot of credit because you can imagine that I talk to a lot of business owners all the time, and very few really go all in. And I'm always really honest with it. I'm like, hey, if you go half in, there's no lukewarm success here. Like you have to go all in to really make the impact you want, or you got to try something different because it's not going to work for you. And you did, and that's just so exciting to hear. And so obviously I know like pre-COVID versus, post-COVID, some businesses are just it's a different normal, right? During COVID, in that transition, getting rid of cruise ships, going fully your own digital marketing, how's that journey been? And, where are you now? And where do you see yourself going?
Um, well, basically here I had my website in place and I'm getting bookings. Well, that guy Marvin, my good buddy, died in an avalanche here in Ketchikan. I wasn't with him that day. Some another buddy was, but anyway, so he passed away. And when he died, he took all of his passwords for all of his websites with him. And
Mm,
so one day my website stopped working. It's like, oh, huh, what's going on here? Well, he had it registered, I don't know where, but anyway, we couldn't, that website went bye-bye. So his brother somehow got into his computer, or maybe he gave it to the local place here in Ketchikan, and they got into everything and they kind of restored the website to an extent, and then connected me with Fair Harbor. But I didn't feel those guys were all in. The guy kept telling me we're not taking any more clients. We're too busy, and he told me that, and I'm like, well, that means you're too busy for me. And I wasn't really happy with the result, and that's when I started looking for other avenues. And it must have been right after COVID that I signed on with you guys. And that was, the step to really let's get this thing going, because what they were doing wasn't working. So I found somebody new, found you guys, and here we are. Now going forward, you know, I just talked with Denali, my account rep, about possibly adding a new a new tour where we just take people out to the beach and we show them all the same marine life. So we get a diver who jumps in the water, brings up sea stars, sea urchins, and cucumbers, gives them a whole guided marine life tour, but at the water's edge. This will be good
mm,
for the folks who are maybe have a health restriction that we can't take them out in. Maybe it's a group of family, some want to snorkel and some don't. And we can kind of time it out so that they're all getting to the water when we're bringing the other people out. So adding that other tour could be a huge boost in revenue, just taking people to the beach, making an hour
right.
and a half thing instead of a 3 hour tour. And then they can see their family go snorkeling while we're at it. So that's kind of where my next thing is going to be. I think starting out that little tide pool tour, but also, booking out the snorkeling tours that we got. I've got a great team in place that's coming back for next year. So going into next year, I've got guides who are already trained, they're already certified, they already did this all summer long. Whereas this last summer, I had to train all new people. I took an entirely new crew of people, put them through PADI snorkeling tour guide certifications, did all the rescue training with them in the water, all this kind of stuff. So this last summer was really a lot of hard work, but I got two local girls. I got my second cousin from Australia, I think, coming back. And so that way I can focus on maybe adding this new tour for this next summer.
So smart, right? Being able to create a lower bar of entry for people, because you're right. Like there's family situations where only a certain people want to go and they go, but then what are they doing? And so to being able to make it more of a holistic approach is going to be able to potentially, increase a significant margin of revenue without all the extra things that you're talking about. More wetsuits getting wet, more like obviously managing in the risk of someone being in the water versus up on the shore, that's significantly different. So a whole bunch of like kind of win-win-wins. That's really cool. Something I wanted to ask, and it was just like, when do I ask? When do I ask? But right now it's a great time. Like, give me like, what all does someone see on a snorkel tour in Alaska? What are some of like the amazing ones to see? You're excited that they get to see it. What are some of the kind of the staples? Like, what all are someone seeing in a snorkel tour in Alaska?
Well, it varies every single day. It varies by the time of year. We have a very dynamic site. We have 20-foot tidal changes in 6 hours.
Hmm.
So the view at low tide is completely different than the view at high tide, but we're guaranteed they're going to see tons of sea stars, or what are more commonly called starfish. Well, they're not fish. So the marine biologists refer to them as sea stars, is the proper terminology. But we've got purple sea stars, orange, browns, reds, all different colors of the rainbow. So they're going to see and actually get to handle some of these sea stars, and we're going to tell them all about them. So it's a fully guided marine life tour. Sea urchins are super common out there, and they can be as big as a volleyball, with spikes all
Mm.
sticking out of them. They're not nearly as brittle and dangerous as the ones in the Caribbean. So we can bring those up for them, let them pass them around. All the stuff that we do bring up, we always make sure we put back in the same habitat, same depth, as close to where we found them as possible. Sea cucumbers is another real staple. And then the whole water column is full of like bits and pieces of plankton, little larval states of weird creatures that we don't even know what they are. Sometimes there's jellyfish out there. The jellyfish come and go based on the water temperatures. So there can be days when there's hundreds upon thousands of jellyfish in the water. So they're just seeing all these little guys undulating along. There's clear ones, there's big red ones that can actually sting, but we're all clad in the neoprene. There's little barnacles that are feeding mussels. There's tons of fish out there, little from the little herring that the salmon and the whales feed on, up to the big old rockfish. Sometimes we get octopus encounters, wolf eels. This summer, I snorkeled with a harbor seal on numerous occasions that was hanging out at the site. Sea lions. We had a humpback whale surface literally 10 feet away from a group of people, completely unsuspecting. And then all of a sudden, there's a humpback whale making that big old spout and diving down, like literally right next to him. So, big things come swimming by, orcas, the whales. So you never know what we're going to see on any given tour, but we're going to see lots of stuff. There's more marine life in Alaska's intertidal zone than just about anywhere in the world. It's just completely different. So all these little weird things, sea anemones and tunicates and all the plants, kelps, algae, there's just tons, and crabs. I mean, God, we can just go on and on. There's tons of stuff to see out there.
That's awesome. Whales kill like that to see an orca. That's insane. Like all the others, I'm like, okay, yeah, yeah, being an Alaskan, but I'm like, man, to be able to see an orca like that, that's kind of hard to compare, right? Like that's just insane.
It's pretty exciting, that's for sure.
When you go out, do you go out just straight from the shore, or do you guys take out like some sort of raft and then go in? Like, what's the typical like? Do you just go right in off the shore?
Yeah, we go right off the beach at Mountain Point. Now, we use the term beach fairly loosely. It's very rocky out there.
Yeah.
So, Mountain Point is our physical location, and that's the place we used when I came out with Norwegian Cruise Line. It was recommended by the local dive shop. Uh, there's a variety of reasons why I use it. It's only 5 miles from the cruise ship docks. It's very close. The shop is 4 miles from the cruise ship dock. So we drive 4 miles down the road, stop here at the shop and get our wetsuits on, and then drive another mile out the road to where the snorkel site is. So it's super conveniently located. And it's got a really dynamic features out there. It's from shallow tide pools, where people can stand up on the bottom when they're first getting started. But there's also rock walls that drop off about 100 feet deep right off the side of the shoreline there. So we do offer free diving instructions for people that want it. We have optional weight belts to offset some of this positive buoyancy of the wetsuits. So we give them a fully guided marine life tour. And if they want to learn how to free dive, or maybe they're already free divers or scuba divers, we have the weight belts for them so they can swim down the wall. So it's a really cool site. And another thing I really love about this place is it's right across the street from the fire station. So,
Mm.
and if we have a medical emergency, they are there lightning fast, super quick. So that's why I choose not to go by boat, or to some more remote location, because we have everything we need right there, very close to the shop. And that way we can run a 3 hour tour and give them a full hour to an hour and 20 minutes in the water.
That's awesome. What is water temperature like typically, across the season for you guys?
I would say the average temperature is about 55 degrees. In May, it's as cold as 42, 43, and it gets as high as 65 in the middle of July. We had a really long stretch of 65-degree water this year when the sun came out. So yeah, at that water temperature, people don't necessarily need to wear their gloves. Some people like to take their hoods off, and it's kind of up to them. But yeah, average about 55 degrees.
Yeah, I mean 65 degrees with a wetsuit's warm. I mean that is warm, at least in my opinion. I live on a lake here and our boat's got a, temperature, and if it's a 65 plus, I mean you easily can jump in and swim just in your shorts, no
Oh,
problem.
yep.
So that's really awesome. Wow. Well, given all your time and all the years, is there any crazy stories that you tell, or the story that you've shared a lot about it, like anything in the snorkel tour life?
Oh man, I mean,
I'm sure there's
I've
a
seen
lot.
a lot of crazy things. I mean, but one of the most, I'd say, I've been a dive instructor for almost 38 years now. I've been diving all over the world. But probably the most amazing encounter I ever had was right out here. My buddy and he was one of my tour guides, and I've become friends with a lot of my staff, keep in
Sure.
touch with them. So him and I went out in my skiff and we were going to go spearfishing. We can actually spearfish for king salmon as long as we're in the ocean. But we do it right at the river mouth where the fish hatchery is. So there's
Sure.
some boundary rocks. They say you can't fish upstream of these two rocks. And so we sit right on the line there and we go out to spearfish for king salmon. It's a really fun, crazy activity. Well, on the way out, we encountered a pod of orcas, and there must have been 40 or 50 animals. It was huge. It was like one of these super pods. And so they're, a good 100 to 200 yards away. I just shut the motor off. I look at him. He looks at me. And we start gearing up and we jump in the water. Now I got a GoPro with me, and within I mean, like 30 seconds, a mom and her baby swam right up to us. Now we're in 300 feet of water, right? We're just hanging on one hand on the side of the boat, one hand with the GoPro. And out of the depths comes this mom and this little tiny baby that, was about the size of a dolphin, right? Maybe 6 feet long. And the baby kind of looked up at us, rolled over on its back, and acknowledged our presence, and then they just went on by. And that was like, of all my encounters and all my years, that was probably the highlight of my entire career of, even though I wasn't leading people into the water on that particular tour, but being in the water and having that kind of encounter where a baby orca recognized my presence. And I've got that video on YouTube. It's there. It was pretty amazing.
I believe it, man. I mean, orcas are just so smart, so crazy, so dangerous, but everything I've heard about orcas, right, is like there's never been reported a danger in encounter with an orca, right?
Yep.
With a human
Never,
kind of a thing.
never attacked a human in the wild. And
Yep.
that was the risk I was willing to take, I guess.
I, I believe it. I believe it. Have you ever seen, like, I know, in Alaska, right? It's like the Alaska trivia knowledge is that, there is sharks in Alaska, right? Like there's like the salmon shark, I think is the more common one, right? Have you ever seen sharks?
I've seen spiny dogfish, which is a real, they
Okay.
get to be about 4 or 5 feet long maximum, but I've never seen a salmon shark. And, it's always in the back of my mind. I mean, having gone to Humboldt State, that's great white shark territory. And I used to go free diving for abalone down there, and I spent a lot of time in the water. I never saw a great white, thankfully. But no, I've never seen a salmon shark here. From what I gather, they tend to hang out more in the huge, immense schools of salmon. Like up in Valdez, they have an amazing
Mm,
salmon run up there. I know people go like kayak fishing for the salmon sharks. But I've never seen one here. But it's always in the back of my mind, you know. But I think they would be hanging out more where the salmon streams are, you know, following those mass congregations of salmon. But I know friends who've caught them in their gill nets, not far from where we go snorkeling. So,
wow.
there's sharks in every body of water. And, if anybody should have been bit by a shark at some point in their life, it'll probably be me, because I've spent so much time in the water. So,
Yeah.
mom's fear, my mom's my poor mother.
And I mean, tell me about like personally, I want to be selfish because spearfishing has always seemed like the coolest thing in the entire world. Do you like go spearfishing for salmon like every year?
Yes. Now, When I first started doing this many years ago, the salmon runs were a lot thicker, a lot
Sure.
stronger. They have deteriorated, and that's just the way it goes. So, I haven't gone every year. It just depends on how busy I am, what my tour guides are looking like. I only got out there once this summer, didn't see a single fish. We were out in the water for like 2 hours or so. So I just think the salmon runs have deteriorated a little bit, but we can also go scuba diving for lingcod, spear those, rockfish. There's all kinds of fun stuff, but I do love spearfishing. It's a real passion of mine.
I believe it. I mean, it's definitely, it's like a bucket list thing for me, so that's really cool. Well, that's awesome. Well, Fred, this has been amazing. I have loved to hear all the context of your story, where you're at. What I would love to know, because like you said, I didn't go to business school, didn't know business, jumped around. For someone that's looking at getting into business, you've had such, and I know you're going to not take it this way, but like you've had such a successful career. Like small business, especially given the niche that you're in, like that is survival rate's low, right? The statistics on business, making it 5 years is so low, making it 10 years is significantly lower, and you've been doing this now for so long. What are some of your words of wisdom, of your perspective advice to someone that's looking into getting into business, given you don't have the crazy resume of experience to do it and you still did it and you're doing it well? I would love to hear what that perspective is of yours.
That is all about doing what you love, doing something that you're good at. And I was very lucky over the years to have some amazing mentors
Mm,
who, I mean, of course, my dad, he was the one who got me into scuba diving. He took me to Bermuda when I was a kid, got me in a scuba class. I got certified, so that's where the bug was. From next to working for his brother in Virginia, pulling nails. My uncle had a lumber company where he would purchase buildings and then pull all the nails out and remill that wood into heart pine flooring and paneling. And that was a horrible job, pulling nails in the heat of Virginia in the summertime. But he instilled a very strong work ethic in me. Work hard, play hard. So he taught me how to kayak. He taught me how to roll a whitewater kayak, took me down my first river, taught me how to mountain bike, took me camping on the weekends, but then 5 days a week, busting my ass pulling nails, right? Uh, so he was a great mentor. But then when I got on the cruise, and my diving safety officer at Humboldt State, this guy's name was Phil Butolph. I don't even know if he's still alive anymore. I've tried to look him up, but he was the diving safety officer for Humboldt State, and running an entire college curriculum of scuba courses from open water right up through dive master, research diver. This guy trained me so well to be ready for anything, in the water, for medical emergencies and all that kind of stuff. So I had such a great background training. Same thing on the cruise ships. There was two guys on the ships, my very first managers, that took me right under their wing, and they trained me to be managers within my first, 2 or 3 contracts. I didn't make manager right away, but they gave me, again, all that. So doing what you love, having the skill set to then take it to this kind of level. So yeah, just doing what you love is the most important thing, and being knowledgeable in what you do, obviously. And I told you I bought the book Small Business for Dummies. I know nothing about running a business, but take care of your employees. Get QuickBooks because it's really easy. I still do all my own books,
yep.
So yeah, QuickBooks and that book, and just being passionate about what I do,
And
knowing.
mentorship. That's a huge part too. I love that. That's one of yours. It's a big one of mine. And so
Mhm.
that's amazing. So work hard, play hard. So you work really hard in a very finite season. What's play hard outside of the other things you've already said? Obviously, avid outdoorsman, but like there's winters. Obviously, winter down there is a lot different than winter up here. But like your off season, what's play hard look like for you?
Oh man, I've been going on all kinds of crazy trips. Every summer or winter off, I've done some just amazing travels. Like, okay, one of my favorite places, New Zealand. Go to New Zealand, they have every kind of adventure tour you could possibly imagine. Canyon swings off of these cliffs, whitewater kayaking down Class 5 rapids, mountain biking, diving in the Milford Sound. So I always go on all kinds of crazy adventures, but wherever I go, I usually bring a bag of frisbee golf discs. I'm an avid disc golfer.
Mm,
I played frisbee golf around the world. Um, I bring my mountain bike with me just about everywhere I can. So I love the mountain bike. I'm also a kiteboarder, so I follow the winds. I spend many winters in Maui learning how to kiteboard. And then I took those skills to a place in Mexico called La Ventana. We're actually heading down there for Thanksgiving on a family trip. My sister joined me on my very first trip there. She learned how to kiteboard, kite surf, and now her and her boyfriend split their time between Hood River, Oregon in the summer and La Ventana in the winter, and they just chase the wind. So these are the things I love to do. I love outdoor sports. That kind of stuff keeps you young. Being active. I love to hike. But I enjoy cooking. I enjoy sitting by the pool and reading a book. Just all that happy balance of life. And spending time with family. My dad's getting older, so I've been spending a lot of time in Arizona, which is a great place to go from here. I'm gonna go do it again this winter. I take all the seats out of the snorkel van. I put a bed in the back. I hit the road to Arizona and base out of there for the winter. And then I can help my dad out as needed. So that's a great place to be because there's excellent hiking, there's great mountain biking, frisbee golf courses all over the place, tons of breweries and great restaurants. So it's always good to get out of here in the wintertime. I can't stay here in the winter. It's just too depressing with all the rain. There's no ski area here. I also ski and snowboard. So did a lot of Europe travels. Oh yeah, lots of crazy stuff.
Been all over, man. Are you one of those like you've hit almost every state in the country?
Pretty close. I don't know if I've done a whole state count, but I bet I've hit almost everyone.
It seems like in all my travels, especially when you go do the adventures, the tours, those out. I've never met a tour guide or a tour person in all my travels that isn't like the most adventurous, outgoing person. Most of them are that, right? To me, you fit that mold from my perspective, which I'm
Yeah.
not near as experienced as you, but I've done a decent amount of travel and fun adventures, and I'm the same thing, avid outdoorsman. I love Alaska. I love it for the winter and the summers. I don't have the rain like you have down there. I mean, not a lot of
Mhm.
people know that like, where we live up here in the valley of Alaska versus Ketchikan, it's a different, I mean, it's a different world, in Alaska
Sure
for
is.
sure.
It sure is. Yeah, if we had a ski area here, I would probably teach skiing and snowboarding,
Yeah.
just something to do in the wintertime. But there is no ski area here. We got to hike for turns and that there's avalanches, so I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, split boarding is, one thing skinning up, but yeah, it gets dangerous as you get older. And I get it. Like before kids, I was like, I wanted to do squirrel shooting. Like my wife was like, "No way! Like I will
I would
divorce you
love
if
to
you
do
do that."
that.
Yeah, I mean that's the way that I am as an adventure and extreme sportist and like that. I was a young times very part time like sponsored snowboarder as a kid. I had some small like Skull Candy sponsorships, so I had like headphones and stuff like that. I used to submit and create my own. Like maybe that's where my working background came from, right? I used to get footage from me snowboarding, submit it to different magazines, and get small little highlights and get like small endorsements and stuff. When I was a kid, it was the coolest thing in the ever world. I never got paid, but I just got some free stuff. It was a lot
Huh.
of fun, and
That's really
um,
cool. I've got Burton's first snowboard hanging on the wall up here that I was given to me when I was a kid, because my
wow,
stepmother went to school with Jake Burton, and my dad
yep.
met him at a cocktail party, and we were all skiers as kids, and then I got that snowboard, and I still have it, so a classic. Yep.
I respect the heck out of Burton, and there's no question the brand itself has done more for that sport than almost anything else. But
Mhm.
being a snowboarder, as my perspective, and I was obviously younger, so I came up in a later generation of snowboarding. It was they'd already set the way and that sort of thing. I could go to any ski sport resort and snowboard that sort of thing. But I always had a hard time with Burton because to me, snowboarding was such a thing that bucked the system. Was my passion to get into
Mhm.
it. But like in my opinion, Burton became a system, right? And so it was like, that was always
Yep.
a hard thing for me. So I never rode Burton in my entire life. I've never rode a single thing Burton or anything owned by Burton because I was just like, nah, I can't do it. I can't do it. I love it for what it is, but that seems like it's turned into its own system itself. Respect to it. I wouldn't probably have if it weren't for it, but it was always
Yep.
my funny nuance with it.
Huh, interesting.
I mean, again, it's just I don't know. It's just how I work. But well, Fred, thank you so much for taking all of this time and sharing your story. And I'm just so grateful for what you do as a business owner in Alaska, especially. I love the niche passion, like like I can only imagine the looks you get when you tell people, oh yeah, I do, like, what do you do? Or, oh yeah, I run snorkels, tours out of Alaska. People are gonna be like, I guarantee you, people are like, Alaska, what? Like, I mean, the reactions you must get are hilarious, but I'm just so grateful that you do what you do because I think it is the coolest story to have as a person.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, the looks I get on the dock when I'm standing there holding my sign, when the cruisers are coming off their ship, snorkeling in Alaska in this weather, I get ridiculed. Oh, it's really funny. But I've got my good comebacks to them. I'm always like, oh, it's not too late to sign up. You want to come along? It's warmer in the water. Let's go.
I bet you 20% of your business is probably that. I mean,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
that's great.
Good to talk to you.
Fred, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And we'll have to talk again soon. Okay.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you so much for listening to Kenversations today. All I ask, if this was valuable to you, please give it a like, give it a follow, subscribe, share with a friend, or if you'd like to, go follow me on any social platform, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're here for it. I hope to bring value to you every single day and look for the next one. See you soon.